Welcome to Triple H, Hamilton Happy Hour, where we talk about pianos, talk about music, and everything else in between. Hey everybody, this is Tobias over at Hamilton Piano Company. This is Triple H Hamilton Happy Hour, and we have a distinguished guest with us today. Along with Mike and Mike that everybody knows, we have Karl Roeder, who is a very well-known and reputable technician, and we're just excited to have you here on the podcast, Karl.
Who you calling reputable?
Well, I'm trying to boost you up a little bit.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Happy
Good to see
here.
you too. It's been a while.
Really.
Yeah, I'm still reeling from seeing Mike without a beard.
Yeah, when I was away, I think, and when I came back, you did it while I was gone,
Yeah,
and
I
I'm like,
believe
who the heck is this guy?
Yeah, I
Who's
was
the
telling
new
Carl,
guy?
I still saw some friends this weekend that haven't seen me in a while, and I forget that, it's been like 3 weeks now, but I still haven't seen quite a few people, and it's like old news for me, but, people are like walking right past me and just glancing right by me like I wasn't there. Like, oh my God, that's you.
Yeah, some people look wildly different depending on what they do with their facial hair. If I didn't have the goatee for years, but I've had a mustache since I was 18. And then my girlfriend in New York back in the 90s told me that she preferred that I not have one. Well, happy girlfriend, happier life. So I shaved off my mustache. Well, right at that time, Steinway sent me to Canada to do a job in Calgary. So I go through customs, been through customs before, not a problem. Suddenly, I'm pulled aside, and I'm in the room with the Canadian customs guy, and they're looking at the picture on my passport, and they're looking at me, going, "You got any other proof that you're this guy?"
Nope.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see you looking very different without any facial hair, and that's what I did to start off too. I shaved everything, bald face as can be, and I'm really uncomfortable like that.
You feel naked?
Yeah, and I look like I'm about 4 years old too still. So I guess that's a good thing as I get older, right? I'll probably shave all the time when I get older.
That's why my wife likes me to have a beard because, she says my upper lip's too thin and I look so much younger when I shave. So
Yeah, they have a lot more ways of detailing it than we do.
Yes.
I just feel stupid.
So anything new in the piano world, Karl? Any exciting things that have come up that, funny anecdotes about working on a piano that you've come across?
It's deadly boring.
Oh, don't say that. Then no one's going to listen to our podcast.
Yeah, it's.
Well, we're aiming this at piano techs, all right? So they're kind of used to that.
It's the everyday work that you just find little things. For instance, just went out to Fisher Island, which is an island off of Miami Beach. You can only get there by ferry. And they've now instituted a guest pass that they can send on your phone. So for the last 20 years, if I had to go to Fisher Island, I'd pull up to the ferry dock, and then the people running the ferry would call the people on the island who would or wouldn't answer their phone. And I'd sit there for half an hour until I got clearance to get on the ferry, which is a real experience anyway, because you're lining up to go to Fisher Island. And so you've got a pickup truck like mine, and you might have a couple of just normal sedans and a van all heading over there at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. And then the ferry comes from Fisher Island, and Land Rover, Mercedes, Maserati, Ferrari, Land Rover, Mercedes, Ferrari, Porsche. It's just going, somehow the people who are living over there are not living the same life as the people who are living over here. But it's really interesting these days working with Steinway, as I do a lot, because Steinway's got their new product, the Spirio, which is their high definition player system. And the people who buy Spirio pianos run the gamut from professionals who want all of the advantages that they can get out of a reproducing piano and the connectivity to other professionals, to people who want something that'll sit in their living room, look pretty, and they don't know how to play. They don't really know much about music in general, but they get the iPad and they start playing it. The first thing they want to know is, why is it so loud?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's an acoustic piano. Yeah, but I mean, can't you turn it down? I go, well, we've turned it down as far as it goes. You know, the guy who designed the system got very, very upset when Steinway added volume control. What do you mean? I said, well, his point of view was he designed a high-definition playback system, and as soon as you add volume control, it's no longer absolutely reproducing what the person played.
Oh, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, when, for instance, Chucho Valdez, he's got a lot of recordings that he did for Steinway on the stereo system. And if you've ever met Chucho, he's about 6'8" and a robust physical presence, and he plays about like a giant would.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he's really into it, he's really giving the piano a workout. Well, that's great for me. If I'm sitting in a room by myself listening to Chucho Valdez, I'll just have it on full volume and experience the way he played the piano. The vast majority of people who are using these things in their living room want to be able to play it while they're having a cocktail party.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting series of experiences figuring out what people want from their system.
And those are concert artists. So if you think about it, the way that they play is on a concert stage. So you take that and put it into a home atmosphere. It's like putting that artist in your home. Well, you're going to get a bombastic playing piano because a lot of artists are played like that. I mean, they play soft too, but you're going to get that from the concert stage into your home. So it's kind of, I understand, who created Spirio, why he thinks that way. But at the same time, you have to please the person who's spending all that money on the piano.
This gets to the heart of what I try to tell new technicians or any technician I'm working with for the first time. Who are you working for? Because there's way too many technicians that are working for the piano. We know as technicians what we want. Oh, well, it should have this much touch depth. It should have this much blow distance. It should sound such a way. It should be able to reproduce these dynamics. So I ask people, what does this piano need? A young technician will go on for 10 minutes about things I just mentioned. I'll look at it and I go, oh, this piano doesn't need anything. It's a piano. It doesn't have needs.
It's not paying the bills.
That's right. The person that made your phone ring, that caused you to walk in the door, they have needs. Go figure out what those are and see what you can do about making the person happy, and the piano will take care of itself.
That's like a true case, because what happens is when you do it to the way that you think it should be, doesn't mean the owner is going to be happy with your work. So you sit there, like voicing it, for instance. I never voice a piano to the way that I think it's going to be for a customer. I voice it to what they want, because sometimes they want it softer than I would do or brighter, and you have to do it for them because it's their piano. And there's times that I've had customers that I've done things to pianos that they wanted. I'm like, okay, it's your piano, not mine, but if that's what you want, that's what I'll do. And even on the concert stage, I've done it before too. And I just was like, I'm like, but it is, they're the ones that, own the piano. So they're the ones that have to, like you said, they're paying you for the work.
Right. And I think in our situation is, sometimes the customer will come here, play the piano here, and it sounds a certain way in our shop. And then once we get into the house, it's a completely different situation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, requires, some more in-home, service calls to get it dialed into the way it sounds in their house.
Absolutely. I run into this with concert pianos, is Steinway will have me come in to prep a new piano, and they'll want me to go to a warehouse somewhere and set it up. Well, that's all good as long as it's just going to get played in that warehouse.
Right.
But as soon as it goes out to somewhere that has a different floor and a different height ceiling and a larger or smaller airspace, then it's going to end up sounding a lot different. Well, you just have to make your best guess on what's going to be the best for lack of a better term, generic sound. That I find that I have artists that come through, and I'm not trying to show them the world's best piano. I'm trying to show them a piano they expect. And for concert artists who are traveling, they are much less interested in sitting down and saying, oh my heavens, this is the best piano I've ever played. It's always nice if they do that, but what they really want is not to have anything that's wildly different from what they expect, because they're going city to city to city playing a particular repertoire, perhaps with the same orchestra, and they've gotten to the point where they know what the orchestra is going to do, and the orchestra knows what they're going to do, and if they get a piano that's really different from what they had last night in a different city, they've got to really work hard in rehearsal. So
Yeah, because they got it a lot different, and we've touched on this a little bit before, than all the other musicians in the orchestra, because they all bring their instruments. So the pianists are walking in blind a lot of times to, what they're getting, and sometimes they're getting garbage. So
yeah,
Used to playing a Steinway, and then they wind up with a Kimball.
hopefully not.
Yeah, right.
We love you, Kimball.
They're out of
Rest in
business.
peace.
hey man, I'm a graduate of Kimball University.
Right on.
I spent a fantastic week in French Lick, Indiana.
Nice.
So, Karl, what made you get into the piano business?
Wynton Marsalis and I are the same age. We both played the trumpet. Went and started recording, and I knew that what I really needed was a job. Funny story. When I was about 12 years old, there was a high school teacher that was my sister's science teacher. He was also a Creek Indian shaman. And we went over to his house for whatever reason, and there was an old upright with the front off and a tuning hammer on it. And naturally, having never seen anything like that, well, what's going on here? He goes, well, I'm tuning my piano. And I thought that was fascinating. And he looked at me and he said, I think you'd make a good piano tuner. Well, I forgot all about that, of course. Then, fast forward 10 years, I'm 22 years old, get out of college, and I realized that I had this calling to the piano business. And so I went back to Tallahassee, where I was from, and found a guy, apprenticed with him. Actually, apprentice is a fancy word. I worked for him for free, and he taught me the basics of tuning.
Okay.
And then he left the music store he was working for, and I took over for them. And I worked there for a while, and then one night I was out at a laundromat, and because I was too poor to rent a place that had a washer and dryer. So I'm out at the laundromat doing my laundry, and who should walk in but this same high school science teacher. And he mentions that he had heard that I was tuning pianos and wanted to know how I did what I did. And I told him, the basic process that I'd been taught and what I was doing. And he looked at me and he goes, well, that's all right, but it won't get you to Carnegie Hall. Like, I'm a barely surviving piano tuner in Tallahassee, Florida. I couldn't be farther from Carnegie Hall than east is from west. And I went about my business, and I did change the way that I tuned. Offhand remark from Leroy Edwards when I was out at the Little Red Schoolhouse. I picked up my William Braid White book and transposed his temperament up a third, so I was tuning A to A, which is because Leroy had said that might be a good way to do it. And then I got to thinking that high school science teacher had said something about tuning starting on A, because that's what orchestras do. I did that. Then spent the next 6-7 years working at Tallahassee and then in Macon, Georgia. And out of the sky on top of me falls this opportunity to go to work for Steinway & Sons in New York. And I thought that if I go to work for Steinway, maybe I'd work in retail for 5 or 8 years, and then they might let me near the concert department. No, I went up there and tuned a Steinway 1098 upright for them right off the factory line, and they said, how would you like to work in the concert department?
Wow.
I didn't know at the time the reason they were hiring me in the concert department was because they really wanted to irritate one of their concert technicians by making him know that he could be replaced. So I went to work for the concert department, went to work for Franz Moore, and he was the chief concert technician at the time. And one thing and another, I survived the first month there and learned to tune the way that they wanted it to tune, which turned out to be exactly the same temperament system I had worked out in the basement at Brian's Music in Tallahassee, which from the suggestion from Leroy and the science teacher. And next thing you know, I'm tuning at Carnegie Hall.
That's how you get there.
And I thought back to that night at the laundromat and went, well, dang. And I haven't seen that fella that science teacher for 30, 40 years now. And I'm kind of scared that if I do, he's going to tell me something else.
Yeah, you don't want to play with the Magic 8 Ball with that no more.
Nope.
Which is funny. Carnegie Hall is something we get to hear people reference a lot because we come across little old lady's piano and they say, "Oh, this was played at Carnegie Hall." And, "Oh, yeah, nice. That's cool." And by my estimate, I think they go through about 12 pianos a day because as many pianos that were played at Carnegie Hall from the stories that we hear, they go through an awful lot of them.
Yep.
Yeah, and what people say is, "Oh, this was owned by so and so and so and so and so
Yeah,
and so, this artist and
sure,
this and that."
sure.
Oh yeah, did they sign it?
But we don't have any documentation on it, so we can't trace it back to it.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. The one time I got one of those that I thought was pretty legitimate, there was a lady in Miami. She had a Steinway Model B that had a Hoffman action in it. Joseph Hoffman was a concert artist, very famous in the early 20th century. He was also an inventor. He patented shock absorbers in cars, and I think some of the early windshield wipers. Hoffman, being a genius pianist and an inventor, redesigned the grand piano action. And the repetition was pretty much the same as the repetition we use now. The big difference was the hammer shank and flange were configured so that the drop screw was forward of the center pin. So if you think about it, your typical grand piano flange has a center pin running through the flange, and then back 4 or 5 millimeters is a drop screw. Well, Hoffman reversed that, and it made the action far more responsive. Well, Vladimir Horowitz was one of the few artists that became aware of this, and he was a huge fan of it. So this lady was telling me that her father had bought this piano from Steinway, which they had the receipt from Steinway at the time, but that he had heard Horowitz play it at the recital hall at Carnegie Hall. And at the time, the recital hall upstairs, they would have had a 7-foot piano. By the time I was there in the 1990s, there was a 9-foot piano in the recital hall as well. But that was one of the few times when somebody gave me that line of, "This piano was at Carnegie Hall," and I go, "Yeah, that's entirely plausible." And somebody just bought that piano at auction, and fortunately, part of the description of it included a description of the Hoffman action, and it was sort of my plea to whoever got it: don't throw these parts away. I even included a note: if you're going to rebuild this piano and throw away the action parts, send them to me. I'll pay you.
Did it make it more responsive?
Yes,
Oh.
it was. It was a piano that had verdigris throughout, and I treated that the old-fashioned way with just naphtha.
Mm-hmm.
It worked well enough, but once I got it working, it played really well. And she had a couple of artists that were competing in the Dranoff 2-piano competition stay with her in her house, and they came up to me a couple of days after they started staying with her, and they were like, "Wow, this piano is really different." And I just started talking to them about the Hoffman action, and they got very excited about it. But it's very inside baseball.
Yeah. talking about verdigris, so what I learned at the last convention was that even Protec causes verdigris into center pins. Have you had any issues with that?
I have not had issues with Protec having caused corrosion that made the piano seize up.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't used Protec in a long, long time. I don't think I used it for more than a month back when it was new.
Mm-hmm.
I have a problem with any kind of oil in a bushing. And there's a good chance that Protec may have something in it that's mildly corrosive to brass.
Mm-hmm.
And it might take 50 years to figure out something bad is happening. Ballistol is an oil that Börsendorfer was using back when I got trained by Kimball on Börsendorfer pianos. And on Ballistol's website, they even mentioned it might be mildly corrosive to brass. However, my problem with oils in center pin bushings is what I call the ratchet effect. I had a client with a 7-foot Mason and Hamlin. It was a beautiful piano, modern Mason, made in Massachusetts. And he couldn't control it at mezzo piano to pianissimo. And I took the parts out, and of course I had my little gram gauge, so I could a little spring contactor that tells you what kind of friction you have in there. Well, the way that this worked was I took out a part and I did the swing test. I held the flange in my hand and I held up the hammer and on the end of the shank and I let it go, and it did a remarkable swing test, 8, 9 swings and no side play in it. And then I moved it slowly, and it felt like there was a little ratchet in there. It would just kind of go tick, 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 moving in either way. And I put my gram gauge on it, a little contactor spring, and it went up to 11 grams and then 0. So what would happen is that because of the oil, it was lubricated to the point that once it started moving, it would keep moving because it was very well lubricated. But the felt was tight enough that it didn't want to start moving. So that little ratcheting feeling was the process of the felt grabbing and releasing, grabbing and releasing. And it turned out that's what was making it impossible to control at soft level. So I went through and I eased all of the bushings and used a little alcohol and anything that wouldn't free up, I just used John Menino's reamers and reamed and repinned. The next day, I got him back to the guy's house, and he started playing. And this is a guy who could play like the devil. He was absolutely terrified of playing in front of anybody else, but he would sit for his own amazement and play Horowitz transcriptions. The guy really played. And he sat down and started playing his Mason Hamlin after I had eased the bushings, and he started to cry. And I'm like, oh no, I've ruined it. And he looked at me and he goes, I thought it was me. I thought I had lost the ability to play soft. I didn't realize that it could be something mechanical. I literally thought that I was losing my touch. And it was super emotional for him. So that's the long version of why I don't like to put oil in bushings.
But has there ever been any artists that like maybe have ever gave you a really run for your money, being on the concert stage?
Oh yeah. There was a time when I had an artist that was absolutely certain that the touch was uneven on the concert grand on stage. And I will listen to you and I will believe what you say. And then I'll assess what's in front of me and I'll believe what I see. Well, the touch on the piano was about as even as it could be, and the aftertouch was really, really consistent. So I had recently been to a lecture by the great Jim Harvey, who for years was at in Los Angeles school system and worked for Kauai. And he had mentioned something about throwing punchings on the floor. I don't know exactly what he meant, but this artist told me that the touch was completely uneven and really wanted this addressed before he played. And he was not kind in his description and was not solicitous of my goodwill. But he left me to my own devices and told me he'd be back in half an hour and expected much improved piano. So I reached into my bag and I got out some green punchings and some red punchings and some blue punchings and left them strategically on the floor and then set about doing the best tuning I knew how to do because that's what I was really there to do.
Right.
And he came back and I had the fall board off and, he came back. So I dutifully put the fall board back in and, set the piano back up and took my tuning hammer. I said, well, Maestro, why don't you see if I've improved it or if it's any better at all. And he sat down and goes, oh, this is a completely different piano. And that gets back to the heart of being a concert technician is not your technical skills. It's about the person that's coming into the concert hall and is about to stake their career and reputation on whatever they're able to get out of the piano that night.
Mm-hmm.
It's extremely high stress for them. What a concert technician needs to do is to, as much as possible, make them comfortable, make them believe that they don't have to worry about the piano. Of all the things I got to worry about, if I can give them a piano they can ignore and just let them make music, then their night's going to go better and my life's going to be easier. If I express to them, whoa, this piano is really tough on me and I'm doing the best I can for you. I'm working, I'm working miracles for you here. I've now just made them really nervous because oh, what's so wrong with the piano? They just got to do all this stuff. And now what's going to happen? All these people are going to be in the hall. They're going to hear me play and it's not going to be my fault. No. I like to just look at them and go, well, we've had good success with this instrument recently. It's really stable. I've been working it a lot the last few weeks. So if you have any problems, I'm right here. But otherwise, just see what you think of it. And I find that works better because if I have to go do a lot of work, then I can. And they tend to be really grateful if they have a real legitimate problem and you're able to solve it. But most of the time, if you're confident that the piano's in good shape, you let them have that confidence that the piano's okay, they can just sit down and concentrate on music and, they don't need you to take the action out and file the hammers and voice everything to
They
the
just need punchings on the floor.
Exactly, leave punches on the floor. It's about comfort.
Mm-hmm.
If they're comfortable, it's going to be a better night for everybody involved.
And like you said, they're imperfect humans just like everybody else. So they're nervous.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be, they may not show it, but they are, I mean, they're, especially for a solo pianist, it's like a comedian. He's all alone on stage. So you got a solo pianist, he's all alone on stage. And, how many times, I've heard someone make a mistake, but no one knows it. I mean, 99.9%, no one's going to catch if that artist made a mistake, but they know it. And that's what bothers them. So sometimes they don't want to blame themselves for it. They want to blame the piano too,
Don't give them an excuse.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I had one of my great moments in New York with an artist that didn't want to wear a mistake. So this was back in the day when we had pagers before cell phones. So the concert technicians at Steinway, we carried pagers. And this happened to be on a Friday night where my best friend Ed Wittenberg and I used to play pool every Friday night down at Chelsea Billiards, or the middle of the second game or something, and the pager goes off. So run over to the payphone. They used to have payphones, and call up, and it's Lincoln Center. It's Avery Fisher Hall. It was a famous violinist and a famous accompanist. And the famous accompanist said, the piano's out of tune and refuses to go on. And this is the message that's related to me by the head stagehand. So get on the bicycle, run up from 23rd Street up to 66th Street, run into Avery Fisher Hall. It's a full house, and I'm sitting there dressed like a bicycle messenger. And I go, full head of steam. I'm running out there to find out what the heck has gone wrong with the piano at Avery Fisher Hall. It was perfect this afternoon. And about 2 feet shy of the stage door, the side door to stage right, the oldest stagehand grabs me, pulls me aside, and he goes, the accompanist dropped a pencil inside the piano. So I'm like, okay. So I go out and get out my screwdriver, and I take the cheek blocks off, and I take the fall board out and put it in my lap. I reach inside. I grab the pencil. There's like 2,800 people sitting in Avery Fisher Hall watching me. I very, very theatrically take the pencil, deposit it into my shirt pocket, and put the fall board back in the piano. And as far as I know, I did not make the New York Times review, but the concert went on without a hitch.
Yeah. We had that just today. Right. We had our last move of the day, and we get there and we're looking over the piano, doing a check-off list on, with the case of the piano and the condition of the piano, and we can't get the fall board up. So, and of course it's a Kawai with the little tiny screws on the fall board. So, you got to hold it just a certain angle so you can get to the screws, but so it's a whole deal. So we finally get it up, and it's a recorder. It's a full recorder, foot-long recorder in there. And the guy goes, oh, that's where my flute is. That's why I couldn't finish that piece. It's amazing the amount of stuff that just falls down inside a piano.
Yeah, I had a customer today that one of our techs went out and tuned the piano, and she called complaining about a squeak in the pedal that he had fixed. And so then she calls back and says, no, the squeak went away, but now there's buzzing in my piano. So I said, I'll come out personally. Let me see what's going on. And it's a 6-foot Halliday Davis, I think. And so I said, she had sticky notes on the keys. And I said, can you play the piano for me? And she has the lid completely closed, music desk completely closed up. And as soon as she played the keys, I knew exactly what it was. I opened up the lid and I raised the music desk, and it was the brass brace for the prop for the music desk, and it was vibrating. And so
it's probably bent.
It was actually wasn't bent. No. The screws were a little loose. So I tightened it and I showed it to her and I said, play it now. And I held on to it and it was gone. And she goes, I feel so bad. I feel so bad. I said, don't feel bad. This happens, but this is what it is. So I laid it back down and I tapped it. She didn't have to play the piano. I just kind of tapped the music desk. You could hear that. And I said, that's what it is. So I said, I'm going to put some felt here because it's brass on brass, and so it doesn't happen again. And then I realized that the back of the music desk was the stand was actually touching the desk. So I said, let me put some bumpers here too, because if you play it with the lid completely closed up, there's a lot of sound happening inside this piano. It's going to make it vibrate. So, but she was extremely happy. But she's like, I feel so bad you came out here for this. That's what we do. I mean, that was the deal. I said, I'm glad it's this easy of a fix. Sometimes when there's a vibration in a piano, it's you sometimes
take a day, right?
And you need two people to because like you'll ask the homeowner, can you hit this note for me? And they hit it once, and I'm like, no, keep repeating it. Or to do it a certain way so you can kind of hone your ear into where that vibration or problem is, and then sometimes they're bang, sometimes they're playing real soft. It's just different ways. But that's the nature of the beast. I mean, it's an imperfect instrument made by imperfect humans, and we're trying to make it perfect, but it's impossible.
It's an unachievable goal.
Yep.
thing I love is when the vibration, it's very loud, isn't in the piano. I had one customer in Coral Gables, a really nice house, and they had a Steinway piano, and I just tuned it the day before. And I got a call, as fate would have it, I was in Coral Gables, 3 blocks from her house the next day, tuning for somebody else. She calls me up, says, "There's a terrible buzz in the piano." And I said, "Well, I'm 3 blocks away. Let me come over right now." And she was kind of shocked at that because she knew I lived 40 miles away, but okay, sure. So I come in and she is, let me back up, set the stage. Really nice house. This customer was a woman of striking beauty and was clear that she was used to the world operating the way that she thought it ought to.
And this was in the Miami area?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
So I went in and
last week.
she's sitting at the piano and she's playing and she goes, "Can you hear that?" And there was a really nasty buzz, around, middle of the piano, some couple notes either side of middle C. And she's playing it soft, she's playing it loud, and it's buzzing, it's buzzing, it's buzzing. And I said, "Keep playing that for a second." There was a Tiffany lamp about 6 feet from the piano, and she's playing it, and I can tell she is giving me the death stare. You did this. You made my piano make this horrible noise. And I said, "Keep playing." And I walked over to the Tiffany lamp, and I grabbed one of the little
Times.
stained glass pieces, and the sound stopped. And she looked at me. She went,
Did she accuse you of tuning her lamp too?
she looked at me and she went, "Seriously?" "Yep, seriously." And like you said, she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry."
You got to call a lamp technician.
Yeah.
Here's your bill.
Like, "Yeah, sorry. Your $29,000 Tiffany lamp. That's your problem."
Well, I know my piano in my house, thankfully, nobody really plays it too much, except for my 13-year-old every once in a while. But it's right adjacent to the bar. So I got to make sure there's no bottles touching each other or empty glasses touching each other, because it's a nightmare. I know when it gets tuned, it's, Eric tunes for me typically. And there's all kinds of buzzing going on right next to the piano.
My father told me this story one time. So he went to this customer's home, and she had a vertical piano. And so she goes, "There's a squeak in my piano." And so he's playing each key, and then he hits a key and hears a squeak. Then he hits the key again, and the squeak is completely gone. So he's like, okay. Then he hits the next key and hears a squeak. Hits the key again, squeak's gone. Next key, squeak, then the squeak's gone. And he's like, what is going on in this? So he opens up the piano and he finds the problem. There's literally a mouse inside the piano, and the hammer was hitting the mouse and made the mouse squeak and moved a little further up, and it kept moving.
Wow.
And my father said, well, that was a smart mouse, because he had a place that he was safe from the cat, and he was warm because there was a dehumidifier system in the piano. So he made a pretty good home for himself.
Yeah, finding livestock inside pianos is definitely one of the joys of being a rural piano technician.
Yeah.
I've seen some nightmare pictures of mice inside piano and the damage they can do inside the action.
Oh, I remember pulling the action on of a Steinway for one of our technicians that we were rebuilding his Steinway. And it was, as soon as you pulled the action, you could tell a mouse or a rat had just chewed and destroyed this.
Yep.
Yeah, I went into a little country church in Georgia, and I was expecting, some evidence of mice. Nothing. Clean as a whistle. It's like, wow, that's really unusual. It's wintertime. There's a damp chaser. It's warm. It's closed. Every other church within 50 miles of here has got at least one mouse. And I opened the bottom door of the piano, and there's this 4-foot-long snakeskin. I'm not going to tell the people at the church why they don't have mice.
That church mouse is gone.
That was their security.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny business. It's such a unique business, and there's so many different stories, and I know you've probably got a ton more, and we do too. I mean, you guys on your end with what you do, and on our end with what we do, and that's the cool thing about it, is for people to hear these stories, because you would never expect to hear this kind of stuff, because who else are you going to hear it from? Technicians. But there's not very many, if any, podcasts out there that are bringing these stories to light so that people can enjoy them, and and it's going to keep going on and on and on, because the amount of stories that just Karl alone, that I'm sure that you have, you could be a podcast for 5 years, So and you're just one technician, and we have other technicians and other people that are in the music industry. We were talking with Steve Camp today, who might be coming on board to do a podcast, and we hope that he does. He purchased a piano from us, and he was the founder of Christian music, Christian rock, yeah. Yep. And super nice guy, just really really nice. And but yeah, it's and even on both sides of the coin, not just from the technician's standpoint, but from the teacher's standpoint. From the artist standpoint, you're going to get to hear in the future all these different stories that come about, and it's all full circle. If you really think about it, it's a full circle from from start to finish, and that's why the piano business to me is fascinating, because there's a lot of people getting into it. Have you noticed that, Karl, where there's a lot more younger people getting into the business, and it's a good sign. It
seems like just the last couple of years, really. I think
it
seems like
COVID,
we were kind of stagnant there for a long time, with not very many young technicians getting into the business.
Yeah, I've been very very fortunate to have helped 4 people now get into the business, and 2 of them were children of clients of mine. 2 young men that I had been tuning the pianos for their families since they were in preschool. And
Wow.
one of them works for one of the major rebuilding shops in New York. And he called me up when he was, I'm going to say, second year in college. And he said, I'd like to dabble in piano tuning a little bit. I was wondering if I could shadow you for a day. And I completely shut him down and went, nope. Sorry, man. If you want to dabble, you're going to have to talk to somebody else. If you decide that you really want to do this, there's nothing I won't do to help you. But yeah, if you're going to dabble, I'm sorry.
I mean, a day should
can't
do
help
it,
you.
right? I mean, you can get the basics and start tuning in a day.
Oh, yeah, that's all it takes.
His grandfather had been a piano tuner. And so his father, also an artisan, he did radiator repair for major tractor trailers. Very, very specialized aluminum welding, and not very many people did it. And he was really, really good at it, very successful. And when Ben told his father what I had told him, father goes, yeah, that's a guy you probably want to hang out with. So called me back up about a year later and says, look, I want to do this. I'm all in. And he went from tried to do the Randy Potter course, correspondence, and realized that wasn't meeting his needs, and went up to North Bennett Street. Did 2 years at North Bennett Street, got a internship with Steinway, spent 3 years at Steinway, and then went off to, like I said, a major rebuilder in New York. And it's just great to see what he's accomplished. In each case, I want these young people to get in a year or 3 where it took me 10 to get. And so far they all have. I've got another fellow that was tuning for him since, again, before he was in grade school. He called me up when I was at Florida State, and I asked him to go seek out Florida State's technician at the time. That was Ann Curry, who was sort of a legend in the college and university technicians field. And he took her course. Next thing you know, he's all in. Did North Bennett Street for a year, and then got the one of the 2 slots at Florida State in the master's degree program. So spent 2 years getting a master's in piano technology at Florida State. And now he's worked in California for a couple of years, just moved to North Carolina. And again, his career is so much fuller after 10 years than mine was after 20. And it just makes me really happy to see. And
That's awesome.
Have my nephew, who works here at Hamilton Piano Company, is another story. We were at a family reunion, and there was a really beat up old Everett piano in the dining hall of the conference center that the family owned. And I wanted to touch up the unisons, but I didn't have any tools with me. So I went downstairs to my brother-in-law's workshop, and I got a half-inch open-end wrench and a quarter-inch socket extender. And I taped them together, and I couldn't find a mute, but I did find the insert from a ballpoint pen, and that worked well enough. So I muted the strings with that plastic insert from the ballpoint pen, and I tuned with my
MacGyvered
improvised. I did, fully MacGyvered. So Chris was watching me do that, and I had told him, I says, years ago, I gave your father my copy of the Randy Potter course. And so it's got tools, and it's got descriptions of what you need to do. If you're interested in this, he's a great musician who spent the whole family reunion playing guitar for all of us at all the gatherings. And they're just clearly very musical, really good mechanical aptitude. But at the time, he was just sort of figuring out his life. And at 28 years old, I was like, yeah, it's time. Told him, you could do this. Well, he got the course, and he went back to Kansas, where he was working on a farm, and started practicing with the Randy Potter course, and called up and said, I really want to do this. Could I come live with you and really learn how to tune pianos? Well, he's my wife's nephew, my wife's brother's son. And I told Hannah, I says, well, yeah, Chris is going to come stay with us while I teach him how to tune pianos. And our daughter had just left for college, and we were empty nesters for 9 glorious days. And then Chris moved in, and Hannah goes, well, so he'll be here for, 3-4 weeks, right? I went, he's probably going to be here for the next 6 or 8 months. Well, not only did he learn to tune really well, really fast, but living with his aunt after being a bachelor for a number of years and working as a farmhand, there was a civilizing process that went on, which would involve me coming home to find Chris nowhere to be found and my wife with smoke coming out of her ears. And then I would go over to my neighbor's house and see Chris sitting in the garage with my neighbor having an adult beverage. I'd look at him and I'd go, so, do you have any ass left? He goes, nope, she chewed it all off. But it worked. He's a professional piano technician, works for Hamilton, is much in demand for his tuning and repair skills, and he met a wonderful woman to whom he is now engaged, and I credit my wife for all of that because she didn't have to train him. But it's just the little things that we do as our day-to-day business that other people see in a different way than the way we see it. And sometimes just a word here, a thought there, it can make a huge difference. One person can make a difference in another person's life without realizing it. And it's something that I try to keep in mind while I'm out working on pianos, because sometimes it's just the next piano I'm working on. But I might not know that this particular piano working properly after not working for a while makes an enormous difference in somebody else's life that might cause them to go make an enormous difference in other people's lives. It's the ripple effect.
All right. Yep. And it's kind of like paying it forward too. As technicians, when we learn something from higher up technicians, it's no good to anybody but you unless you pass it on. I mean, if you keep the secrets of the stuff that you're doing, then what good is that? Because you're not helping the future customers for future technicians. So it's kind of our duty in that sense to pass this information along because, I'm doing it with my son. I do it with Chris too, and the other technicians and you guys are always learning stuff every day at the shop too, when you're not on the road moving pianos and doing stair moves, like you did too today. Mm-hmm. And it makes you, it really, anything with the piano makes you think, anything from moving it, tuning it, rebuilding it, refinishing, playing it, teaching it, it makes you think. Well, what's that do? It actually kind of keeps you young, because when you're using your brain so much, and this is just my opinion, but when you're using your brain that much, it's keeping you young. Like Fernando's 84 years old, and he still has all his full hair and it's black, and he is still just very, very good technician. So I don't know what it is with the water at Steinway with you guys, because like Jean-Claude and Fernando, I mean, you guys are just are so great at what you do. So there must be something in the water. And
that's what they say about the bagels. So it stands to reason that it's,
I had a friend of mine that worked for Yamaha, and he was in town doing some high-level work for them, and I was actually shadowing him. I took some time off just to travel around with him, and he was working at some of my venues, and he would follow me around and to some other things that I was doing. We came to a Steinway concert grand, and this thing was messed up. I mean, the strings were rusted, and some of the jacks were separating at the joint, and not all the notes were playing. And I opened this up, and I just looked at it, started to laugh. I said, well, we had our work cut out. And he stopped me and he went, "That's it." What? He goes, "I just figured out the difference between you Steinway guys and all the Japanese technicians." "Really? Enlighten me." He goes, "With the Japanese technicians, if they walk up to a piano that's got serious problems, there's a sudden intake of breath through their teeth. Oh, not good. You Steinway guys, you walk up to the piano that's in the worst shape I've ever seen, and you just start to laugh." And I go, "What I'm going to do? If I'm going to get upset every time there's a piano in rough shape, I'm going to have an unhappy life."
Right.
And then one of my friends at Steinway, my mentor in the soundboard business, Juan Toribio, had taught me the greatest phrase ever uttered in the factory. "Hey, man, don't kill the job."
Yeah, right.
If all the pianos come out perfect, what are we going to do?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Yep.
good point.
Yeah, and it's our job to keep them going, and because it's a breathing instrument in that, so to speak, way, because my father always said, the pin block is the heart of the piano, the soundboard's the lungs of the piano, so and it fluctuates, and it's like a human in the sense it's temperamental, it acts up, and we're the psychiatrist for the piano. We're the ones that have to, no, it's okay, we'll take care of it, but it's it's just a fantastic business.
Yeah, it's also, I worked for Steinway for years, and I still work for them as a contractor. So people think that I must only work on these lofty, amazing pianos. And the thing is, I worked for a Baldwin dealer for years before I went to Steinway. I have more experience with Baldwin spinets than most people who are still in the business. So I'm out there working on your Kimball spinet, your Baldwin spinet, and if somebody really needs to work, sometimes I can go work on a beautiful Kawai EX, their top of the line piano, absolutely just beautiful instrument, and tuning and voicing. And then the next appointment, I've got a 60-year-old Everett spinet that hasn't been tuned since the Eisenhower administration. And what makes it hard for some technicians to continue in this business is they might not realize on that particular day that Everett spinet was the most important piano that I did that day, because the person that needed that piano to work needed it desperately. Whereas the Kawai was good before I got there. I'm guardedly optimistic it was at least not worse when I left. But that little Everett Spinet was unplayable. And the person who owned it that had hired me to come out there, they really needed it to work. So that day,
That's a
that
great take.
piano, that was the most important job that I had that day. And it also reminds me of something I mentioned. I worked for Franz Moore, who was Horowitz's technician, the chief concert technician at Steinway. And Franz was a German man, and he told us a few things over and over. One I'm reminded of because you mentioned concert artists being nervous. He told this to the rest of us in the concert department over and over. I can't count the number of times he related this to us, that he was working for Horowitz at Carnegie Hall, and Horowitz was about to walk out on stage, and he looked at Franz and he pointed to the piano bench, and he said, "That is the loneliest place on earth." And I always keep that in mind. The other thing that he told us over and over that I was reminded when I was working on that Everett Spinet, more mornings than I can count, he would look at us and he'd go, "You know, boys, there's good money coming from those bad pianos."
They need a lot of work. Well, Karl, thank you very much for coming on. We hope you enjoyed it. We definitely enjoyed it. And, would you like to do this again sometime?
Absolutely. Anytime I can come to Hamilton Piano, I'm happy to do it.
I appreciate that.
I got to tell you, I've told you before, and I'm going to tell you again, what you've created here is extraordinary. I don't know of another shop like it, and I just could not be more impressed and proud of you for what you've accomplished here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know you and my family go way back too, back in the day. So we've got a long friendship, and that means a lot to me because I look up to your skills. And I tell your nephew that all the time. You and there's a few technicians in this world that I really look up to, and you're definitely one of them. And I appreciate any knowledge that you give us. And I love the fact that I can call you up and say, "I got a question." And you actually pause what you're doing and you take the time to do it, even though you might be in the middle of something. So I do appreciate that very much.
Well, yeah, I wasn't born knowing how to do any of this stuff. Almost everything I know, somebody helped me to learn. And like you said earlier, I can't just keep this for myself. If I take this to my grave, what does that benefit the world?
Right. So what we can do in the future too is when you do retire, just come work here.
Retire. The thing is that I've only got 17,000 miles on the tires that came with the truck, so I won't be needing to retire them for a while. But retirement. What is this retirement you speak of? I'm a piano
Fernando hasn't found it yet.
Yeah, no.
Piano technicians, in my experience, don't.
Yeah.
We get more selective about what we'll do, but I don't know anybody that ever just really quit doing it. And I guess it depends on why you're doing it to begin with.
If you're in it 150%, and your love's in it and your passion's in it, it is hard. It is really hard too. It's funny because when I was away in Oklahoma, I was by myself because my wife and my daughter couldn't go because my daughter couldn't fly because she wasn't feeling well. So I'm by myself, and my son, I haven't seen heard a piano in 5 days, and my son calls me. He was staying at the dorm, and so he calls me up and he says, "Hey, Dad, can you take me to the music store?" I'm like, "Oh, yep, I'm right there." So I go pick him up, and we go into a music store, and we walk in. I see a Kauai white baby grand, and I was like, "Oh."
Did you go, "Can I buy this?"
And so I'm like, "Oh, there's more in the back. Brandon, go do what you got to do. I'll be back." But it's I missed it. And I didn't play any of them. I didn't, I just kind of walked around, looked at them, and then I ended up going the next day to a piano rebuilder shop over there. I found them. I said, "I'm just going to show up," and did that. And I think we talked about that on the podcast.
Sure.
And, it's when it's in your blood, it's in your blood, and you sweat it and you bleed it. And that's in my definition of a piano technician. Everybody, we hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will we'll let you know when the next one is, and if you want to follow us on Facebook or YouTube, please do. And you can always come by our shop in West Palm Beach, Florida, and see what we do here. And if you have any questions, give us a call, or you can email us at info@hamiltonpianoco.com. Thank you.
561-965-8090. Thank you, everybody.